Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Okoroafor Christabel. I am a social work student of University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and I'll be talking about creating a sustainable future for the African child, a Solarpunk concept. So please just move on to the next slide, sir. Solarpunk is a speculative literary genre and a subgenre in climate activism that depicts a possible future where technology and nature exist in ecological harmony and symbiotism. It's also known as a form of ecotopia, that's ecological utopia. Before we move on to the next slide, I would like to talk a bit about Solarpunk because most people who are listening now might be a bit confused about what Solarpunk is. So solar and punk, solar is all about renewable energy. It's all about bringing a future where we focus on creating a very sustainable environment, not just full sustainability, but a kind of sustainability that is long term. It doesn't just, for example, I think I was watching a video and it was talking about how our solar panel farms use a lot of water. So it's also impacting the climate in terms of preservation of water. So how can we actually make these renewable resources sustainable to the greatest extent that we can? So moving on to other things, I would like to talk about how Solarpunk also depicts a harmonious community void in opposition to philosophies like capitalism, consumerism, fast fashion, and struggle. It marks inclusivity and social and environmental justice and promotes communal living. I think if you don't even want to call it solar punk, you can call it people punk because it's very people focused. It's very focused on collective action and social action. Now we are seeing the other types of punks. Why did I put this? I was trying to make us know why solar punk is very optimistic. So when we look at media and how they portray climate change or the end of the human race, steampunk is looking at this very historical aspect. That's the Victorian era, where the primary source of engine is steampunk. So it's kind of like going back to where we were before. Then cyberpunk, I think we've watched so many movies, a lot of sci-fi movies that talks about how the future is so technologically driven and it's completely computerized. But solarpunk is different. It's a rebellion against the stereotypical future for man that describes it with images that are grim and a possible extinction or apocalypse. So please, I'll move on to the next slide. I think we should look at why. Why is this even important? Why should we even be having discussions about this? Why should we be looking at sustainability awareness in terms of Solarpunk? Why is it even something important or something credible enough to talk about when it concerns climate change? So Solarpunk focuses on the essence of African philosophy. And there are three philosophies I really want to look at that is very much in line with Solarpunk, which is the Ubuntu philosophy. And it focuses on African humanism, emphasizing interconnectedness. If you remember, like I said before, we are always talking about people punk. It's very people focused. And that's the essence of the Ubuntu philosophy. It talks about community, people. How do we help people around us? So that's the same thing with Solarpunk. To achieve this future that we are envisioning, you know that we need social action, a kind of unity when it comes to fighting climate change. And then we have the Sankofa, is a Ghanaian philosophy that encourages learning from the past to build a better future. I was watching a video that was talking about the African Green Line in Senegal. It's a World Food program. It's a project right now. So they were trying to use syntropic farming to create this green line to push back the drought caused by the Sahara Desert. So it's trying to go down the line. So they started this syntropic farming to try and push it back. And we saw how it was really great that even in drought-ridden climates and countries, we can see how we can use technology in line with nature, looking back at the past, at what we can achieve if we go with nature. Based on this Sankofa philosophy, we can see how looking back at the past, and trying to reflect a future that is sustainable can be achieved. Now, syntropic farming is in line with permaculture, and permaculture basically means we try to replicate what nature does. That's in terms of food forests. If you watch the video that is based on that project, you see how they try to replicate what nature does, and that's Solarpunk for you. It tries to create this thing that nature does. It does not go far from what nature is already doing. It goes in line with nature, as I talked about before. It's very harmonious with nature. So the last philosophy will be the Harambee philosophy. That's a Swahili philosophy that promotes collective effort and collaboration for the greater good, which mirrors Solarpunk's emphasis on community and cooperation. And you can see from the slide that it says it reinforces a hopeful mindset. We can see, as I said before, media is always portraying this grim and grief-ridden future for us. But Solarpunk is different. It's like, okay, we are seeing what could possibly happen. Now let us look at this other perspective and let's walk through and walk towards this hopeful perspective. Please move on to the next slide. Now we are seeing various characteristics of Solarpunk. We see Afrofuturism, that's bringing technology and the African philosophy or the African culture in whatever way we can. In terms of that project I talked about in the World Food Program, we can see how they brought up something that was part of their nature. One of the the project leads in that project was actually talking about how this type of farming, the half moons, using that type of syntropic farming was actually part of the Senegalese culture, but it was long forgotten. And remember when I talked about the Sankofa philosophy, that talks about learning from the past. We're not saying, oh, let's move to the future, let's use westernized technology. While we're forgetting our own African ideology, it's not saying that. It's very much in line with it. And it's saying we have African philosophy, we have a way of life here. We're going to bring this technology and adapt it to what we have here. We're also looking at ecological awareness. Like I'm talking about it now, most people might not know what Solarpunk is. We are creating a kind of awareness, even for the African child. We are creating a future for the next generation. We can't create that future if the African child is not made aware of what climate change is and the active part we play as human beings in terms of climate change. We have long-term design, and you can see at the bottom of the slide, I talked about sustainability in general, not full sustainability. Remember when I talked about the mesh grids in the solar farms taking up water to cool down the mesh grids? It's basically still creating a problem. So we're trying to create that long-term design. We're looking at green tech, mixture of nature and technology in terms of farms, agriculture. You can see how we have timed irrigation and plants, where instead of always coming back to have to water these plants, you have a technology that actually allows you to irrigate the plants as much as you want to in different times of the day as pre-planned. We have green architecture. It tries to look at ways we can mix nature and architecture. I think that's the most amazing part of African architecture. I think there's a part of North Africa that actually looks at this natural areas. So when they were building their mud house, they had these holes within the itself that actually allowed airflow to move in and out of these places. So we're actually trying to look at this architecture. Yes, we're going to mix nature with the African architecture.
Hi, Christabel. You have 2 minutes left.
Okay. Moving on to the practical application and how we can actually use this for the African child. Please move on with the presentation. We have urban greenhouses. We have gardens, homesteads, and eco villages. There's a part of Scotland called Finhorn, where they actually have their own eco villages. It's so mind blowing how they actually went to repurpose wood barrels, like barrels for making wine, to build their houses. That's the same thing we can do in Africa. We are very much known for being industrial, for thinking outside the box. So it also talks about community gardening, where an entire community comes and they farm, and the produce that they get. Okay, let me talk slowly. We talk about community gardening and the produce that these communities are able to get from farming and creating produce, they can also put it back into developing their communities. That's where community collective action come into place. If we're able to create awarenesses in these communities about what Solarpunk is about and about the climate change and effects of climate change, we're able to tell these communities, okay, see, this is what we can do. If the community is suffering from wind erosion, we know what we can do. We contact agricultural specialists that can actually work with us on this kind of projects. We have treated wastewater. I'm so sorry that I'm looking at foreign countries, but I'm also looking at ways we can bring what foreign countries have to Africa. So treated wastewater, Dubai also does that, where they treat wastewater and use it to flush toilets, to farm. And then we have geothermal heating. What is geothermal heating? It's basically taking heating from the earth crust. You know, the earth crust is made up of different layers, and at the deepest part of the earth crust, we have heating. And so we use this heating to create various things like heating water. Instead of using solar panels, which I told you that it's not as sustainable as it should be, we can use geothermal heating. We can see rainwater harvesting. We can have, it's something that is very known here in Nigeria. Even in my own house, we apply this rainwater harvesting, and obviously this water is treated and is still used all around the house. As I said before, renewable energy, we have decentralized technologies, we have permaculture, which I talked about, syntropic farming. So it's very different. Where, for example, you're a carpenter, you have all these tools. Instead of going into consumerism and buying new carpenter tools, this carpenter can decide to put his tools on lease for other people to use. So it's more like a collective action where, okay, I trust you. Yeah, it's definitely based on the African philosophy of trust. So it's like, I trust you to use my tools and still give them back to me as a commission or a discount. So we are looking at maker spaces. It's basically creating spaces for people to bring innovative designs. We actually sit down with the younger generation, and they actually, because we have informed them about climate change, we can actually see, oh yes, this is what they can do, and we help them to actually achieve these projects. So we have positive psychology. That's the basis of Solarpunk, looking at the future of climate change in a very positive light. And metacognition is looking at the way I think about climate change, or the way we think, or our bias about climate change, and try to change that internal thinking. So we have upcycled goods. I talked about how we can repurpose wood to create houses. And same thing with city planning. How do we actually plan cities and try to how do we plan cities and still try to ensure that we preserve nature? So you can move on to the next slide. Now, the African child, we already know it's the day of the African child. We are celebrating the African child, the energy that the African child has, and the future that the African child has. We're trying to preserve that future for them. And if we are talking about preserving that future for them, how can we actually preserve it if we only have this knowledge and we don't pass down that awareness?
Christabel. Hello, Christabel. Can you round up?
Okay, thank you. I will. So for the African child, we are seeing climate awareness, communal living, upholding African philosophy of oneness, equality, and preservation. And I think one African child that really stood out to me was Natalie Silantoe Ayango from Kenya, who was in the African Youth Empowerment Program, where she really talked about how the African child should be given a place to make decisions about climate change. So the essence of talking about climate change in terms of the African child is for us to create spaces and educational forums to teach the African child about climate change and to teach them how we can actually move from where we are now to where we want to be using the Solarpunk concept. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christabel, for the wonderful presentation. You did so well. On this point moment, I'm leaving it to the people who have got questions, contributions, and also affirmations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
I just want to congratulate Christabel for this very innovative and great presentation. And if she wants, I will propose her to do the same, to present this communication in a conference in Portugal. Maybe she can do it by online. That is an international conference about environmental problems, issues in social science. I can send the link, and I can offer the register in the conference, because I'm one of the organizers. But it's really very interesting what she shared. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Christabel, here is your opportunity. You can get in touch with him and you can register through the link that he's going to send in this conference. Thank you so much. I appreciate. Any more one question? If not, I'm leaving this time to Dr. Kofi to lead us in the next things to follow. Thank you.